I've got a cold and it's 1,000 degrees and I'm sweaty as fuck and I'm tired as fuck, but here I am talking about some music, 'cause I've got fucking nothing else better to do right now until I have to go to work. And if I could stay home I would, but I can't because I'm so fucking busy. God forbid that anything go my way. Hey! Hey you! What's up? How you doing? Come on in. Fucking. Why not? Welcome to a brand new episode of the Metal Meltdown. Today we are talking about a brand new studio album from Wake entitled What the fuck is this thing called again? What is it called again? Thoughtform Descent. That's it. That's the fucking name. This is the 6th studio album overall from this Canadian extreme metal unit hailing from Calgary, Alberta. Initially, they were playing a pretty gnarly mix of like crust punk and grindcore, but with these last few albums, they've transitioned into some very oppressive and like cinematic kind of blackened death metal. I personally came to know them through 2018's Misery Rights, and since then, I've seen them all over the fucking place doing lots of tours and lots of big shows. They've continued to release tons and tons of fucking music, even despite, a fucking pandemic basically bringing the entire world to a fucking halt. They dropped a full-blown studio album and an EP in 2020, and immediately following the release of both, began work on this new album, Thoughtform Descent. And Wake has made it pretty clear already that they believe this is their most diverse, dynamic, and emotional record to date. Writing here in a press release courtesy of Looters PR and Metal Blade Records, I describe the record as a place to reconsider what extreme means. The words brutal, crushing, devastating are overused adjectives for extreme music. We wanted to force people to confront the idea that brutal or extreme ideas aren't just blast beats or angular tritones, or more importantly, brutal elements alongside poignantly passive elements can create their own experience that can channel both and neither. Worth noting as well that the album does follow a loose narrative and at times is dangerously close to being a full-blown concept album, as vocalist Kyle Ball writes here. The title Thoughtform Descent comes from the idea of creating a sort of labyrinth within the mind and manifesting it into physical reality and descending into it. Going on to say, instead of using my personal issues as the focal point, I wrote a non-linear fiction story that focuses on escapism and existentialism. I do incorporate personal issues, experiences into the plot of the story. The character could more or less be me, but it's definitely more embellished than my usual writing, with it focusing more on the story than it does on myself. Morning Dirge, Repose to the Dead, for instance, deals with somebody having an existential crisis, a real collapse in their mental health following a near-death experience. Happy to be alive, but unsure where to go from here. Musically, this is communicated through some brutal, churning grooves, a lot of proggy undertones, gargantuan guttural vocals. It is massive in size and scale. It really does feel as if I'm being swallowed into like some kind of emotional, psychological black hole. Like, the character in question in this song is kind of dragging me down with them through whatever mental, emotional hell they are currently experiencing. The closing moments of this track in particular are pretty fucking devastating. You have these almost transcendental kind of tremolo riffs and these absolutely pulverizing death metal blast beats just kind of repeatedly drilling and blasting into your brain. There's also Swallow the Light, which, well, lives up to its name, to be entirely blunt with y'all. There are apocalyptically intense and destructive flurries of blackened death metal, riffery, and mayhem all throughout this fucking thing. Folks, this thing doesn't just swallow light, it devours light, it eviscerates light, it chows down on light with the same intensity I expect Galactus to chow down on a fucking planet. My favorite moments on this record, though, come from when everything we've talked about so far is combined with the melodicism and the epic cinematic songwriting that I would normally expect from melodic death and black metal. Opening track Infinite Inward, for instance, carries a kind of thunderous emotional urgency that brings to mind Wolves in the Throne Room. The very opening has some somber, intricate melodic guitar work that would not be out of place on an early recording from In Flames or Dark Tranquillity as well, and near the middle to the end of the track, there's some rustic, atmospheric acoustic guitar that brings to mind some more progressive death metal, like little shades of Opeth or late 90s Edge of Sanity. Similarly, you have Observer to Master, a generally explosive and volatile cinematic blackened death metal monster that also has these roaring twin guitar solos and some chanted vocals. It's dark, it's sinister, it's mysterious. I'm weirdly reminded of some of the more serious material I would hear from Dethklok on records like Death Album 3, albeit with a pretty blatant kind of black metal underbelly. The album's closing track, Bleeding Eyes of the Watcher, even goes as far as to adopt some kind of melodic, gothic, Death Doom influence with some slower, moodier, doomier segments and arrangements contrasted with some pretty lush soundscapes and some very abrasive guttural vocals and some very heavy, thick walls of blackened death metal riffery. Definitely one of the most unexpected moments on the record, in my opinion, and as a result, I would say one of the most satisfying as well. The reason why I use quotation marks in describing Bleeding Eyes of the Watcher as the album's closing track, though, is because, well, officially speaking, it is not the album's closing track. It certainly feels as if it is, but that specific title belongs to the translation of Deaths. A relatively simple and short kind of spacey ambient piece that carries and picks up exactly where Bleeding Eyes of the Watcher ends and drops off. And it's not doing a lot for me. It's not horrible per se, it's not even like mediocre, it's just slightly unnecessary. Like, I like the clarity that it adds to the record. I like that it gives you a moment to kind of reflect on everything you've heard and experienced throughout Thought Form Descent. But did it need to be its own individual song stretching out for 3 minutes, never really evolving or going anywhere? No, not really. You could have had like 45 seconds to a minute of like new agey, spacey, ambient nonsense stapled directly onto the end of, you know, Bleeding the Eyes of Watchers, and that would have done just fine. I'm feeling a very, very strong 4 out of 5 on this. I think Wake did a fantastic job writing and constructing and producing this record. It's bold, it's unique, it's powerful, it's brutal as fuck. Lives up to all of my expectations and exceeds them. If you love what Wake have been doing on their last few EPs and records, I see no reason whatsoever why you wouldn't also enjoy this. Considering the band's absolutely insane work ethic, I would not at all be shocked to learn that Wake has already begun production on a brand new studio album. I imagine if, hypothetically, this exists, it's in its very early stages, but if, hypothetically, it does exist, I'm pumped as fuck. I don't know where Wake can really go from here, but I'm excited to see how they continue to challenge themselves as writers and as musicians, and how in turn, how they continue to challenge us through their music. Once again, very strong 4 out of 5. I know this weekend is stacked, cram-packed with incredible music from Oceans of Slumber, Imperial Triumphant, Panzerfaust has a new record out as well, but make sure you don't forget about Wake. Make sure you spare at least a morsel of time for Thought Form Descent from Wake, from Calgary, Alberta. For that reason alone, Canadian shit rules. Duh. Yeah. There you go. And that's it. I'm going to bed. I'm straight up going to bed. Actually, that's a lie. I just looked at the clock. I'm actually going to go to work. Even more fun. Maybe it'll be really slow, and I'll just go sleep in the walk-in fridge. Whatever. It's nice and cool in there. Press this button to subscribe and get all those fucking updates and shit. Blah, 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 blah. Have yourself a fantastic goddamn fucking day, you beautiful fucking bastard, you.